Hi, everybody, and welcome to this Facebook live chat with UPMC. I'm Hannah Storm of ESPN SportsCenter. We have a fantastic panel for you today. We're going to learn a lot about concussions. We're going to learn a lot about concussion recovery, all the latest information from the very, very best in the world. And I want to introduce you to our panel and our foremost expert, and yep, there he is, looking very official, Dr. Mickey Collins. So if you can just wave right there, Dr. Collins. And then you probably recognize the guy sitting next to him, and that is superstar Dale Earnhardt Jr., just one of the foremost athletes of our time, who has suffered concussions and managed to continue his wonderful career and even win a Daytona 500. He's going to tell you his story after that. And then this beautiful young lady next to him, that is Madison Mansman. She is a competitive gymnast specializing in the beam and the bars, and that is her proud papa next to her. Eric is right there. Eric, come on, give a wave to folks at home. All right. Next to Eric is Missy Matthews. She works right next door, so it's great to have her with us this morning. Missy is the face of Steelers.com, and she also has suffered a concussion. She's going to tell us about it. And then right there in the back is a guy we're going to be hearing a lot about in the coming years. It's Jack Young. He's a star receiver at Mount Lebanon High School. He is going to go play for the University of Michigan, next year. And he's going to share his story. His mom, Lillian, is there as well. And then last but very not least is Jillian Andrews. She is in digital advertising. She was working in Pittsburgh. She lives in Washington, D.C., and she also has a great story. I have learned so much just in the run-up to this. I had a concussion myself a couple of years ago. It's unlike any of the other stories that you'll hear, but I think that Missy, being in the media, will really appreciate it. I had a camera operator take a jib camera, which is a big swinging camera, in the studio, and he swung it right at my head, and down I went. So I actually got injured at work by a camera, and I really wish I had known I'd known the folks at UPMC and known about concussion recovery at the time. So I had a very, very difficult recovery after that. So thrilled to be here. Let's start with you, Dale, and kind of give folks a little bit of your story, which dates back to when we were talking about this earlier, all the way back to 2012.
Yeah, I had an accident in 2012 at Kansas in a test, and I had a concussion immediately after that event. For the next several days, actually for the next 3 or 4 weeks, I decided to drive and keep racing and didn't seek any help. I was involved in another accident 4 weeks later that doubled my issues and made the symptoms much worse, and that kind of scared me straight to the doctor. And luckily for me, the guys that I went to see in Charlotte lined me up with Mickey, so that was sort of a stroke of luck for me because of how strong Mickey's team is. But we spent several weeks working to get ourselves healthy. We were back in the car within a couple weeks and racing to finish the season. And then we went on and won the Daytona 500 and several other races over the next couple of years, had a lot of great success. And then last year in 2016, we were involved in several accidents. And in this situation, it was kind of new. We weren't, I didn't know immediately after the accident, the final accident, that I had a concussion. This came on very slow. It was really delayed by several weeks. So I felt, I didn't think it was a concussion at first because it came on kind of like allergies or what have you. But anyways, we got back in front of the doctors and got diagnosed and understand that it was an issue from repeated crashes that I'd had throughout the 2016 year. And the symptoms had gotten quite severe. So I was really lucky and fortunate again to get back in touch with Mickey and his team. And with what they've learned since 2012, the treatment that I saw this particular time was even more robust and much more and necessary, because I was in a pretty serious situation. But they got me straightened out, and I got married in the off season, which was great, and I was healthy and clear and able to enjoy that experience. And now I'm back in the car for the 2017 season, having the time of my life.
Well, that's an incredible story. And when you talk about the struggles, you really talk, you use the word serious. So could you share with us, what you were feeling, what was happening to you physically and mentally as a result of those concussions?
Yeah, the symptoms that I had when I went to see Mickey in 2016 were my vision sort of bounced around. Anything like taking a step or any kind of vibration would shake my vision off of any object or target. So I couldn't ride in a car down the street. Everything outside the car was just crazy, shaking really bad. I couldn't read road signs or anything, and so I just kind of had to stare at the floorboard anywhere I went. Accompanied with that, I had a lot of balance issues. I couldn't turn corners without losing my balance. I couldn't go into darker rooms or hallways without losing my reference of what was level. And I would just lose a lot of understanding of what was upright and what was down. And darker environments were very challenging for me, and very busy environments. Going into a grocery store would multiply the symptoms. And going to anywhere busy like a mall or grocery store, sporting event, that would really bring out the worst. So those are the kind of things that we were dealing with.
And what you say is not that unusual. I know just from personal experience, months after I had my concussion, I had vestibular balance problems, and that resulted in a fall down the stairs and a busted tailbone, and I also broke an ankle because
wow.
I like you couldn't really assess what was level, or when you start to lose your balance, you can't self-correct like you normally do. And so Dr. Collins, I mean, what Dale's talking about, I mean, much less getting back into a race car and continuing his career, but his quality of life was in jeopardy. So what advances have you made? Dale talked about the fact that you were able to even make more advances in the last 4 years to help him get back to normal. What are some of those?
Hey, Anna, we've really made tremendous progress in how we understand this injury. And, when I first saw Dale, the conversation was not, I want to get back in a race car. It was, I just want to live a normal life. And Dale was
right.
not feeling well. And, so we really didn't even talk about racing initially. It was just getting Dale the right therapies he needed to get better. And as a treatment team, we were confident we'd be able to do that. Our treatments have advanced to the point now where we understand there's different types of concussions. There's actually 6 different clinical profiles that we see with this injury. And we're starting to match different treatments with those different profiles. And as the years go on, we get better and better at doing that. And Dale's problems were primarily related to ocular motor dysfunction. With concussion, a lot of times the eyes don't work together as well as they did, and there can be a decompensation of that system. And that combined with the vestibular system, which stabilizes our vision when we move our head and allows us to interpret busy environments. And as a human being, let alone a race car driver, when you have that happen, it produces very distressing symptoms. And I don't think even Dale thought he'd find a way out of it because it's so distressing, and it sounds like you went through some similar things. But with the advances we've made, we can rehabilitate those systems, and an important point here is that you actually have to retrain those systems. It's not rest that takes care of that. And so active treatments for concussion need to replace the more passive approach that's been taken in the past.
I'm here.
Okay, great.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
You guys can hear me, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And I want to continue sort of along the theme of what you said, and just so that people understand, what happens when they come to UPMC is that they are evaluated by your team as to the specifics of their concussion, and then you're tailoring the treatment program for them when they go back home, or if they're lucky enough to be near you, they can get the treatment program there. So I want to, because Dale's example is so extreme, and he's an elite athlete, obviously you can be concussed at any age, and in any way. And so I want to just go to Madison for a moment. So Madison, if you can, and you're 11 years old, and certainly concussions are different at different ages, tell us how you experienced your concussion.
I was in a car accident, and we were sitting still, and then a car came 55 miles per hour and hit us from the back, and then the back of our car was like up off the ground, and yeah.
That will do it.
Yeah, that'll do it. And she was, we had her to the pediatrician, and we're just following a normal course of treatment, and she was seeing no progress. And my son had seen Dr. Collins previously for a concussion, and like I told my wife, we're going to see Dr. Collins. He needs to help us. Got to see Dr. Collins, and diagnosed what was going on with Maddie. It was vestibular, it was exertion, and one of the things that was different that we really liked, that I think was really good for Madison, is she was an active participant in her therapy. She was able to push herself. She was able to continue to do her gymnastics to whatever level she could. When she was going through her vestibular therapy, they would, find the point where she could go to and safely practice and still practice. And I think that helped her more mentally, along with the symptoms of the concussion, because she took it pretty hard when it was taken away from her. And unfortunately, when you look at an 11-year-old child and she does something 20 hours a week, it's how they identify themselves. So she was able to really dig into it herself and work it, and work at it at home, and work at it at the therapy that she was going to. And we're lucky to be in Pittsburgh, so we could go to a variety of any of the UPMC facilities, and to match in with the schedule, and it's worked out great. And she's here to, she's done. She's completely concussed. She's competing again. It happened in September, and she had first she got released finally. Dr. Collins was a little reluctant because there was still a little bit there, and he held her back, and it was good that he did, and really had his finger on the pulse of what was going on. And she competed in 3 meets since then, qualified for states, and participated in the Pennsylvania State competition last weekend. So good stuff.
That's great. Wow. I mean, the message here is that there's hope, right? Because it's so scary. You look at things that you love to do and not being able to do those, and not being able to even function to do, the normal thing. So Madison is the youngest person here today. What do you want people to understand in terms of young people and concussions, and what they need to know?
Well, it's kind of a hard thing to go through, because I wasn't really doing what I wanted to do at that time, and then you have to work really hard to get back, and I got back to what I was doing, and
just have people work hard.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Let me go over to Missy. So Missy, what is, obviously you didn't get hit in the head by a camera like I did, which is good, but you're active. You were out there riding your bike, as I understand. What happened?
Yeah, there's beautiful trails all throughout Pittsburgh. It was last April. I'm almost at the year where I actually had my concussion. Was with my husband, my son, some family friends. We were all having a great time. I made the mistake of not bringing my helmet with me after we parked the car. There were too many people on the trail. Somebody didn't move. I unfortunately was the person that completely veered off. I don't remember falling. I remember seeing that it was coming. I was badly bruised and cut up all over my body, but instantly, everybody knew that was with me that something was wrong with my head. I didn't remember falling. I'm like looking at the river, like, where are we? So luckily, Dr. Collins' team, Dr. French was my doctor. They are right next door to where I work. So I started going there. And a lot of it for me was I never had a baseline test for an impact test. I never dealt with a concussion. I've never had headaches. And not being able to do normal things. My son was one 1 year old at the time. His toys drove me crazy. The lights, the noises, the colors, I wasn't able to read, and I was just mad at myself, you know? You tell yourself, wear your helmet, be smart. Football players know this, gymnasts know what they need to do to be careful. I should have had my helmet on. So a lot of it was the self-guilt, I think, and then realizing that I needed to push myself to try to get better, to just live the normal life, not so much getting back on a bike, which, by the way, I have eventually, I did get back on my bike a few months ago, which was good. Yeah, it was just really hard, and I had a setback, so I ended up having to do some therapy. But just being able to operate, it was very difficult. But I've learned a lot through the process. The players that I cover on a daily basis deal with concussions. I've learned so much about what they go through, and even just the impact test and what it takes and how much they know about our brain. It was a remarkable experience in terms of learning. I wish it never happened, and I will always wear a helmet now.
But I want to say that it is a common myth, and Dr. Collins, right, that helmets can prevent concussions, which they can't. So, you know, that is something that I learned in my research for this segment. But what do you, from her case, from Missy's case, what do you think is the most interesting thing to share with our viewers?
She's a mom and has a 1 year old child that she can't. I mean, there's a lot of overstimulation that can happen when you're concussed, and that's what resonated with me immediately. Is you're a mom, and what it you know, it affects a lot of different things in people. It takes people out of the sports they love. It takes people out of you know, school difficulties in your situation. But I think flipping the script here is that this is a treatable condition, and we have ways of rehabbing it, and I think you went through that. And I think it's so critical to take an active approach to this and to prescribe the right treatment for the right problem, and change the conversation, because I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about concussion right now. And to say it's a treatable injury, which it is, I think really changes things dramatically as to people's perceptions. Just making sure people are aware that there's help out there to get better.
And I think there's help, there's hope, and you know, we do associate concussions often with certain sports. I love the diversity of this panel, because we've seen that really anyone at any time can suffer a concussion. But of course, Jack, that's something that you see a lot in the sport of football. So can you take us through what was your experience, Jack?
We were playing Bethel Park for the section championship game. I remember this was the first game I had to play defense, and like I never played defense because I just like don't like hitting people just because of this like reason. But I remember it was like a play, like, and like the running back was like coming off the edge, and like I saw him, so I went and hit him, but I like led with my head, which like you're not supposed to do, obviously. And I just remember when I hit him, like I just like could like feel it like come over my body, and like I like didn't remember like anything like up to that point. Like it was like kind of scary. And then we had just like gotten the ball because like he had fumbled, and we were going on offense, and he was like calling a play, like the coach was, and I like lined up wrong. And everyone was like, they like had to call a timeout because I like didn't know what I was doing and stuff. And they like asked me if I was okay, and I was just like, yeah, I just honestly couldn't remember like what was going on. And so like that was obviously like really scary for me, like just that part of it. And then just like the weeks like afterwards, like when I was getting rehabilitated, just like little things like just not remembering like 5 minutes of a conversation or something like that. That was kind of like more of my experience and like the vestibular stuff. But so I'd like work on that. Like reading was like very difficult with me, with like staying like focused. I feel like I'd always like start like daydreaming in class or something like that. So I'd like work on those a lot during my rehabilitation.
And that's really scary too, because obviously academically in the classroom, you're trying to keep your grades up. You don't want to fall behind, right? You're looking at colleges.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Lillian, I mean, as a mom watching this go on, what was that experience like for you?
I knew it as soon as he took the hit, because I could see it happen. I actually, you know, we're lucky because we have UPMC physicians on the sidelines, and we have a UPMC concussion clinic 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock on Saturday mornings. And I got the call from his trainer on my way home after the game that he needed to go to the clinic. So, you know, it's scary sitting there in the waiting room to understand, you know, there's lots of different concussions, and like Dale had very, very severe symptoms that lasted for a long time. You know, you don't know if it's something that they can work through, you know, in a short time, or if it's going to affect him and his grades, or, you know, playing football, because it's very important to him, you know, for college, that he be able to play and that his grades stay up. And, you know, he's a teenager, he's irritable anyway, and so it just made it worse. But, you know, we're so lucky to be able to live in a city where, you know, we have these resources right in our backyard, and, you know, they took great care of him. They made sure that, you know, he was healthy before he went back in and played, because taking another hit before he was ready could really, really sideline him. So, you know, we're very grateful.
Dr. Collins, can you talk about that a little bit, about what Lillian was saying about being able to get back and engage in activities that you were doing before, but the ability to recover all the way, these types of injuries?
Yeah, we've just published a study. The immediate removal from play is critical to outcomes, and I'll save you the details, but we found that players that continue to play through an injury, even 20 minutes after their first symptoms of concussion, it can double their recovery time. So it's very important that this is recognized by parents, coaches, et cetera, and the patient's taken out of play. And then they need to get to a specialty clinic that can diagnose actually what is occurring and what type of concussion they have, and then match the right treatment to that problem. As I stated, we have very active approaches now to treatment. And hearing Jack talk, I mean, yeah, he's a student. He's an academic kid first and foremost. And, you know, it sounds like he had an ocular problem, which is going to have a difficult time focusing on his math and science. And if that's not addressed, his grades are going to drop. And even though you're going to the University of Michigan, I went to Michigan State, so the standards are a little lower at Michigan.
I went to Notre Dame.
Yeah, okay.
So we're all friends today.
Yeah, but anyway, no, and his injury was totally different than Dale's injury, listening to it, and different than Madison's injury. And that's the issue, is that there's so much variability. You've got to get your pulse on what's happening and do the right treatment.
And so it's got to be treated, again, it's got to be matched to the type of concussion. So initially the evaluation is so critical, right? Stopping what you're doing, even though, you know, as Dale mentioned, sometimes you don't even know you're suffering from a concussion. It could take a while. So as time goes on, Dr. Collins, is it harder to treat the longer you let a concussion go? Yes,
no question. And the earlier we see someone from it, the better the prognosis. So yeah, get them in, get them evaluated, and get the right treatment plan in place.
Okay, now she's been waiting patiently by Jillian to tell her story. Jillian, how did you get concussed? What happened to you?
My concussion happened when I was in high school. I was a forward on my school's basketball team, so we were in the middle of a big game. I was under the net, and a girl from the other team came down from a rebound, and I took an elbow to my temple. Which sounds really bad, but I initially felt completely fine. I continued playing through the rest of the game, and even in the hours after, I felt completely fine. At least I thought I was fine. That night.
You don't know.
Right.
You don't know at the time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to finish the game. I wanted to help my team. But that night and in the following couple of days, it became very obvious to everyone around me that something wasn't right. I was having memory problems, and I was having severe headaches. So I went to see my family doctor, who diagnosed me with a concussion. I sat out from play for a couple weeks, and then it was my first week back to practice in games, where I think I re-injured myself in a game, and then that's how I found my way to Mickey and UPMC for an additional evaluation and the next steps of recovery.
So what kind of treatment did you receive? What did you do to recover?
So I had post-concussive migraine syndrome, which I'm sure Mickey can talk a lot more about. So the first step was addressing my migraines. I had them every day, and they were pretty severe. I was very sensitive to light and noise, which really impacted me at school. So I had a lot of school modifications, a lot of help in classes. You know, I wasn't in the lunchroom. I wasn't around my friends. And then from there, it was kind of like a very slow return to play.
That's so tough too, emotionally. I think, that's something that we probably don't address enough about concussions too, because it takes you away from the things you love. Sometimes it's people you love and you're confused and upset that, Dr. Collins, I mean, that's a whole nother layer besides the physical, right? It's the impact of these injuries.
I'd like to comment on that, actually. We actually see emotional issues arise physiologically because of the concussion. So biologically, anxiety is a symptom of concussion, and then it can actually interfere with patients getting better. It can condition them not to do the things that they want to do, and it can really take you down a rabbit hole pretty quickly. And that's where we find a lot of patients that don't get managed right. And so, yeah, the emotional part of it is something that you got to recognize as a clinician, and you got to be able to hit that head on.
Also, just listening to some of the people on our panel, Dr. Collins, who have suffered multiple concussions, and it was interesting to hear Jillian say, that she went back and then she was concussed again. Can you talk about recovery and the cumulative damage that concussions can do, and what you found out about recovery and how you can sort of abate those symptoms getting worse and worse?
Yeah, I would actually state that a well-managed concussion is the best form of prevention. And we actually don't see cumulative effects of injury if it's managed effectively. It's just when you're not getting it treated and you keep getting reconcussed and less force causes those problems to come on, that's when we really see the problem. So, that's why awareness is so critical in understanding the symptoms. But yeah, if you treat it fully, we don't necessarily see an increased risk for recurrent injury. We're actually learning that there's certain risk factors that make people more at risk to have more concussions, like a history of motion sickness or a history of lazy eye or a history of migraine, history of anxiety, being female versus male. There's certain risk factors that lead people to have more concussions, but it's not because you have one concussion makes you more vulnerable than another if it's managed correctly.
Dale, and you've sat here and listened to all of these stories, and they've each been fascinating in their own way. If you could share, with somebody at home who might be watching this, somebody who's really, really struggling right now, what would you want them to know from your experience?
The one thing that that's going to help is being transparent, talking to your doctor and being honest with what you're feeling. I guess, in sports with competitors, a lot of times, we tend to want to mask our feelings or injuries, and that's a real dangerous thing to do, particularly with your brain. And being transparent and clear and telling your doctor what's happening and what you're feeling, it's such a hard injury to diagnose and visually see and get your hands around. And so you're really, really going to help the doctor if you can tell them what you're feeling and what you're experiencing. They can understand by just your words alone kind of what direction to go and where to look for, where to target the injury, and also how to treat it. So, a lot of people may assume that you just go in and Mickey's going to run some tests and find it and know how to fix it. Well, that's half of the game. The other half is really you yourself as a patient being really forthcoming and honest about what happened to you and what you're feeling. So that's really critical, and something I think that's important. If we get people feeling that way and acting that way, I think we change the culture and how, not only how, we're already changing the culture a little bit in society, but I think that once we get people to be more honest about what's going on with them and not to hide their concussions or try to play through them, that's so critical, because as you see in some of the cases here, mine included, when you layer the concussions is when you get in this most dangerous situation.
I'm glad that you are speaking about it, because I think there is a culture, and you have some athletes there on a panel with you of that toughness of not wanting to talk about it and not wanting to address it. So by coming forward and being a public figure, you can make a big difference. And Dr. Collins, how important is it to be persistent with your doctor? Be persistent. In other words, to listen to yourself, to pay attention to what is happening in your life. Even maybe it hasn't been diagnosed properly or you haven't treated it properly, but just self-advocate as a patient. Wait, Dale, struck.
So I think I think what you're asking, Hannah, had a hard time, you cut out there a little bit. But yeah, I mean, the transparency, like I sit down and talk to a patient and we really understand, if we can listen to what symptoms they're experiencing in what environments, with what risk factors, with our test findings, it just makes all the difference in the world as to we can understand what's going on and then apply the right treatment to it. And so, and that's what Dale did and Madison did. And, you know, it's very important to understand this is it's a highly variable injury. It's not going to present the same way every time. It's going to present differently in different people.
Your story is going to be different from everybody else's, just like our panel here today. But the great news is that you guys at UPMC have figured out that this is an individual injury and how to treat it case by case. So I really applaud you. Thank you all for sharing your stories. I'm sorry that I had to be here because of really bad weather problems, that I had to be here in New York. But, you know, sending all my support and appreciation to those of you in Pittsburgh, and just like the folks at UPMC, right? We figured out a way to get it done.
Thanks, Anna.
Obstacles, but we figured out how to push through.
Thank you so much.
Did you want to say something else, Dr. Collins?
No. Thank you to yourself and the panel, and really appreciate you guys coming in today and sharing these experiences. Thank you.
So Dale, good luck on the track, and Madison on the beam and the bars, and Missy, we look forward to seeing you report on a winning season with the Steelers. Please bring us some news there. Jack, I mean, listen. Go Wolverines! What can I say?
Go Blue.
We are all going to be cheering for you, even me, except for if you play Notre Dame. And Jillian, we wish you all the health too. And to our mom and dad that are here today, God bless you. All right, for having such great kids. So everybody, thanks for joining us. Go to this Facebook page with your questions. And the great folks at UPMC are going to answer your questions throughout the day. They'll be checking Facebook for any questions, comments, or anything that you might have. So thanks again, everybody, for offering a lot of hope to folks that are suffering from this injury, and to continuing all the great research that you're doing. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.